I know.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Madam Vice President, how are you?
I'm fine. I wanted to make sure you could hear me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, Ms. Barker. Anywhere there's a microphone, you feel comfortable, Ms. Barker.
Hey, Mike, could I ask you a protocol question? Not a protocol question, but a logistical question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're meeting now. I'm online, of course, and it's 5:30. So what time does executive session start?
We will start at 6:15. I have a separate link that I emailed all the board. We'll just click on that link. That way it's private and no one else can access it.
Okay, but you're also having it at the junior high, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're here hybrid. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I was thinking I might have to leave this meeting a little earlier because I want to come in because I want to attend the board meeting tonight. So I'm just trying to figure out, I'm coming. I just don't know how long it's going to take me. And I was just curious what time you thought all of these issues are really great, interesting issues. But could you scroll down the agenda for me, please? So we have the foreign exchange guest teacher program. I'm sorry, Uta, I can't, if I'm cutting into your time.
It's okay. I can't figure out my microphone, so.
Now we can hear you.
You're better now.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. That's all I needed to see.
Yes, Madam Vice President.
All right. I apologize for my technical issues. I'm not really sure what happened, but it is May the 10th. It is 5:33 p.m. and this is the Policy and Personnel Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody who is at the junior high in person and those of us who are online to this meeting. So I will turn it over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. First on the list tonight for the committee's deliberation is the IU28 guest teacher program. There's an annual fee and participation that we pay for every year. It's $500. What they do is they help screen, train, and certify qualified candidates, those who have a bachelor's degree, to serve as substitute teachers. It adds to our substitute pool. For the last 3 years I've been here, we've been talking about the need for qualified subs and the sub shortage. This is just another step in the right direction. It does require, approval, so I'd like to bring it forward tonight for the committee to approve it and move forward with paying it so we can have those subs at our disposal next year as well, ma'am.
Okay. Anybody have any comments, questions? Things we need to talk about? I think it is a nominal cost for the services that they provide, and given the situation with the availability of substitutes, I think it's something we probably should take advantage of.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lauer.
Cinda, what do you think?
I think exactly the same thing, and I think it's a no-brainer. It's $500 a year for the potential to get more substitutes. That's something we need to do.
Okay.
Ms. Lowry, any other questions from the committee, or are you okay if I move on to item number 2?
I think we're good. We
Okay.
can move on.
Item number 2, Ms. Lowry, is the foreign exchange program for the 21-22 school year. As you know, we made an informed decision last year to suspend the program due to the pandemic, and it's a time where we discuss about bringing it back this year. There is a motion on the board to reinstate the program for the 21-22 school year, and we did that because we would like to have a discussion tonight because of our actions last week with the Fulbright program. I attached a safety plan that I received from the program, and we have a gentleman by the name of Mr. Jim Schaefer here tonight to help give some additional insight and answer any questions that the board may have or the committee may have, as this gentleman has hosted foreign exchange students in the past.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, I'll turn it over
Yep.
to Mr. Schaefer to make some comments, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Hello, is it on?
Can everyone hear him?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, my name is Jim Schaefer, and as Mike said, I have hosted 4 foreign exchange students throughout the year, and we are set to host our 5th foreign exchange student from Spain. Diego is his name, and we were actually contacted by his mother, who was wondering, if there was any kind of problem, if it was going to actually happen this year, because it's not just a fall thing next year. They have to get their visa appointments and all their travel arrangements made, and they're kind of feeling the pressure right now. So started some investigation. The obvious concerns are the COVID era is the travel, and I did some digging. I spoke to Karen Coaches, who's the area representative for International Student Exchange, the agency that Indiana has been dealing with for quite some time. And I have some information that I passed on to the superintendent. All the students require health clearance before all this, just to even get through the International Student Exchange acceptance. Then they have their J1 visa meeting that is basically oversaw by the Department of State to make sure that they meet all the travel qualifications to actually make it into the United States. So there's that whole level of health and safety checks from the federal government level. This year, an additional level is going to be required by the International Student Exchange that will, every student that comes will receive a medical clearance indicating they are healthy and free from COVID-19. That'll be a certificate that will be presented to the school district. They will still be held to the same standards that every student here will be held to. If they show any signs or symptoms, they will have to be quarantined. It basically should be pretty straightforward. They'll be held to the exact same standards of everyone else. There are 4 students currently that are interested in coming to the Indiana area. They are all from Spain. I did get, as far as other school districts in PA, there's 13 schools in Pennsylvania that have already had formal acceptance of students. There's let's see, there are 2,200 students that have applied for the fall. The International Student Exchange already has 445 students in the country, and 729 have already been accepted to the fall. So this is a program that has kept going despite the COVID era. They just had to modify their procedure to obviously qualify for all of the health and safety guidelines. I'm open to any questions, help if I can, as far as any further concerns that any boards or anybody else would have.
I know last week when we talked about the Fulbright program, those Fulbright fellows who are obviously adults, IEP is offering them the opportunity to get vaccinated when they're here if they're not already vaccinated. Is that something this exchange program is considering?
They are not requiring vaccines, as these are still children, and the guidelines for the vaccine are still, I'll say, fluid. The Pfizer is indicated for 15 and 16-year-olds. The other ones are not indicated for kids. They took the stance they're not going to require a student to be vaccinated to sit next to students that aren't vaccinated. It seems a little excessive, but they will have the medical certificate. Testing if required. They still have to go through all the contract tracing through the Department of State.
Okay. Sydney, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was pretty kind of shocked by the teeny tiny little paragraph of safety information that was at the bottom of the letter that said it's the safety plan for the program. Do they have, what do they have in place? What are their plans if a student comes over here and becomes gravely ill? What are their, somebody has to know something. We're dealing with minors. We're not dealing with adults. It's different for the Fulbright teachers who come. They are fully consenting adults and so forth, but these are minors. So I'm not expecting that anything will happen, but in order to be safe and really prepared, we need to think about that. So do they have any further safety plan other than the 2 links that are in the agenda, both of which I think are way too general?
Well, I can say from previous years, these students come with full medical insurance through the plan. These parents pay tens of thousands of dollars that go directly to ISE to cover for any kind of medical insurance or any kind of bodily harm. I mean, these kids play sports. They can be injured in other ways, even from previous years. So if in the event that something would happen where they'd have to be hospitalized or anything to that effect, that has already been in place long-term, and that wouldn't change in any direction. They would be treated through the local hospital system, transferred to a tertiary care center if they needed, but they come with full medical insurance through the program. That's not changed.
And so then, Jim, is the communication with the family go through IES then if something happens?
Well, in years past, we've always been in direct conversation with the parents. Last year, Jose was our student. He was also from Spain. Both his parents were physicians, and we were in, well, daily, at times weekly, especially when, he was present during the initial lockdown. And it was the company left it up to the parents, not the host parents, the parents, whether or not, well, do we wait? Because nobody knew if that lockdown was going to be just for the initial 2 weeks or for, as it turned out, a long time. We were in daily discussions with them as far as, well, do we wait it out or not? They eventually, with the recommendation of ISE, made the decision that, I think it was after the second extension that the shutdown had, they decided to pull him home only because the travel restrictions were getting pretty tight and they were afraid they wouldn't be able to get him a flight home back to Spain where he lived. And he ended up finishing out his 11th grade year from Spain through a Zoom meetings in Indiana. So I'm sure he found that very interesting. But the communication is, like I said, the local representative is Karen Coaches, and she is always readily accessible. And then she goes through her supervisor. But as far as communication with the parents, there's never a restriction. We have all their contact information. I know when we had Julia from Brazil, her parents did not speak, especially her mother did not speak very good English, but she could type and read it. And so she communicated through Facebook Messenger because of the translation app. But there's always daily communication.
Okay, and the reason I ask is just that some of those things weren't included in the plan, and I didn't want us to assume that that's what was happening. If I was sending my child on a foreign exchange program, that would certainly be my expectation for any program, but I just thought we needed to be sure as a district that that's clear and consistent and has gone well in the past.
Ms. Lowry, I added a link on the agenda. There are communications from Ms. Coaches about more details about the safety plan. So if that has any bearing on consideration, I included it.
Yeah, I saw you just did that, so I haven't had a chance to look at it. But I mean, I am pleased to hear that there is a plan for communicating with the families of the students who participate in this program. Do we have any other questions, concerns, comments?
Ms. Lowry, if it pleases the committee, we can always offer the vaccine when kids arrive. Not that we'd make it mandatory, but if a student who's arriving here would like it, and maybe vaccine availability in their home country is a little bit more difficult, they always have the option here if there's some consent and some paperwork done, but we can always offer it out of goodwill. If that's okay with you, Mr. Schaefer?
Yeah, I'll add one thing to that. So in past years, the student that we had from China, Ella, I had to take her to the Department of Health for her other vaccine series that she, was required to get. So the Department of Health has always been very helpful with that. I would also like to add too, going back to the previous point, on 2 occasions in previous years, we had children get ill. They were both like viral dehydration, stress type illnesses, and taking them through Indiana hospitals, the emergency room. And that process was seamless. There was no problem. We were in contact with the parents, and we forward them all the documents from the discharge and lab results when they came through. Their health plan that they have is actually very thorough and very, very easy to negotiate. And I imagine it's not going to be any different for this. If they meet the requirements and, I'm sure through the Department of Health, they could get the vaccine if their parents consented. I think from the company's standpoint, they're not requiring it because they are minors and it's not a requirement yet, even here in the United States for the minors. So if that changes, I'm sure their plan will update as well. They seem very responsive to current guidelines.
Okay, that's very encouraging. We've got 2 hands up. Julia?
Yes, thanks, Uta. I think this is a really great program, and really adds a lot of positive things to our student body and our and the whole community. Bringing these children, having the parents sending their children. I'd like to just say a word about Mrs. Karen Coaches. I know she's been involved with this for at least, I think, as long as I've been on the board. And I know she does a terrific job, and I think that she's always been able to answer all of my questions, and she's very conscientious. So I'm pleased to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Hi, Uta. I too would like to support this. The situation has changed significantly since we last looked at this, and I hope that the committee can support moving this forward with a recommendation to the board. Thank you.
Tom, I agree. I think we have a whole lot more information now than we did previously. So, which is, definitely makes me feel more comfortable in putting this forward. Any other questions from any community members? Anybody on the committee? Okay. I guess we'll go to number 3.
Thank you, Ms. Lowry. Tonight, what we'd like to discuss is staffing for the 2021-22 school year. And we're looking at talking about 3 positions this evening. 1, an art teacher, which we'll go into details about the schedule and what that looks like. The posting, advertising, interviewing for elementary synchronous teachers, as well as the supervisor of buildings and grounds replacing Greg Trout. Obviously, since we're talking about candidates, the supervisor of buildings and grounds will be discussed in the exec session. We had 3 incredibly qualified candidates, and we could talk about that we brought forward. But what we'd like to do tonight is really spend time on the art teacher position. As you know, the elementary synchronous teachers, we have talked about that for several months, gained support from both your committee as well as the academic committee previously. But we would like to talk about the art teacher position. At this time, the administration has looked at their schedules, and they're going to present out tonight about their findings. And we're looking to replace an art teacher. We feel that, to bring back the program and have enough of the offerings that we've had in the past, 1 teacher would suffice. However, if the board wants to hire, additional art teachers or nothing, will obviously fall to play of the board. But we'd like, if it's okay with you, Ms. Lowry, to start with the senior high, present what the schedule will look like, then go to the junior high, and then answer and address any questions that the committee may have, if that's okay with you, Ms. Lowry.
Yep, I think that's a good plan.
Okay. Mr. McElhaney, I'll turn over to you to start with the senior high schedule. Randy, if you can go ahead, click on the schedule and open up and see if that adds to anything to Mr. McElhaney's conversation. Then we'll go to Dr. Minnick. Okay, sir? Wade, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vukovic. Wait for Randy to alert. Thank you, Randy. What you have before you is information about scheduling regarding our arts program. We have all the courses listed in the gray section, the first set of columns. And then what we have next are the requests in the actual numbers and averages of scheduling for this year. And in the third column, in that reddish color column, again, the information is repeated for comparison's sake. And we have also the average class sizes. And then for comparison's sake, included the 1920 class average sizes, just so there could be some comparison. And what we were able to determine was that 1.5 teachers, 1 teacher who teaches 7 instructional assignments, and we have 3 other periods, a combination of 2 traveling elementary art teachers. We're able to cover the program needs for the school year. We did not run the Art 3D 2 program. However, we took a look at it as far as the demands for that class. We're able to work that programming in other ways, especially coming to this school year. You will see that contemporary pottery classes, by very popular demand, really have grown. and that class has been very relevant to our students. We do not have Art 3D 2 scheduled to run again next year. However, that is with the recommendation that if we hire a full-time teacher, that we would have 4 classes, 4 of 7, working with the elementary schools. If we can get one more additional period from the elementary art staff, we're able to then offer that class as well if we need to. As of right now, you will see that the number of requests that are given, we usually build our classes or results by the number of requests that are honored. Given that art is an elective, not all of those requests are honored at all times. What we found out in our scheduling, numbers of requests honored are usually between that 70 to 75% range overall. And we take a look at that. If we weighted the number of requests honored around 80%, still with Art 1 at 74% as it was this school year, you will see that there is room in the classes. And even if many of those classes had additional students scheduled into them, we could run those. So that is the art program of the senior high school. And overall, it is a student-driven scheduling process. And you'll see that our art program, the requests did grow this year, especially in contemporary pottery, where we have grown the number of sections from this year from 0.5 for both courses 729 and 739 respectively, to actually 1.5 and 1.5 for next school year.
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. Ms. Lowry, would you like to address any questions from the high school first, or move on to junior high and take them all at once?
No, I have one question. So Wade, you're saying you need somebody to teach 4 art classes at the senior high?
That is correct.
Okay. And then just so that everybody understands, the limitation in pottery is due to the size of the room and the equipment that's needed, not because there isn't the demand, right?
Well, correct. The restriction is the equipment and the space inside the room. We have 10 pottery wheels, and that does limit class size. We looked at ordering additional pottery wheels. However, the room in the classroom is very tight at this time. We might be able to fit in maybe 1 or 2 more at most.
So Wade, what was the situation? It looks like this year there were 16 students scheduled and only 1 class of the first contemporary pottery. How, if you only have 10 wheels, how did you manage to get 16 students in, and can that be done for next year's schedule also?
That's a good question. Because of COVID, the hybrid schedule, full-time synchronous, we're able to share those wheels more appropriately and be able to provide that type of instruction. We were able to make that work. However, based upon a recommendation of the art department, very emphatic that those class sizes should be around 10.
Well, if you only have 10 wheels in this pottery class, that makes sense.
Yes, pottery class does occur daily.
And Wade, just for planning purposes, because I think we're going to get there after Dr. Minnick shares with us the junior high needs. There are, you're saying you have 7 instructional periods?
7 instructional periods constitutes a full instructional load. That would be our full-time high school teacher, Beth Porter. And then if we were to hire 1 and split with the junior high school, we would need to have 4 of those 7 periods.
Okay. I thought we had 8 instructional periods were full load with a lunch and a prep.
No, well, it used to be 6. We went to 7 this year. With Ideal and others, some of our teachers do have 8. However, as we go into doing scheduling, 7 constitutes a full schedule.
And is that per their contract, or is that just practice at the high school?
There's nothing in the contract saying the numbers of courses that can be taught. However, 7 courses within the day, which would also include the life skills art classroom, which runs for only part of the week. We have not scheduled 8. We'd like to leave some resource time in there because arts classes and some of the other hands-on learning areas sometimes are the only times that students have opportunities to do or perform that work or to get extra attention, and they'll come down during that resource time and get that.
Okay. Do you have any other comments, questions for Wade?
Yes, Miss Lowry. Miss Barker has one. Miss Barker?
Okay.
Turn this on, or?
No, it's on. I think it's on.
Wade, could the elementary teachers handle the ideal versus a high school teacher?
They could. Well, perhaps maybe if there were full-time synchronous. As far as ideal, I don't quite know what those electives are in ideal for art. However, for full-time synchronous, if they had the K through 12 certification, which I believe they do, they could handle the full-time synchronous load. Yes.
If the elementary art teachers could handle the ideal for high school kids, then the art teacher at the high school would not have to have ideal on her schedule. Would that be correct?
That is correct. There are no ideal periods at this time scheduled for next year. Like I said, I don't believe ideal art is an offering. I know full-time synchronous art is an offering because of this year's circumstances.
So just a couple of thoughts. And I think I understand where you're going, Barb, but I'm not sure that we have or we know what the elementary needs in art are. Because right now, according to the agenda, we're talking high school and junior high. So we probably need to at least get the high school and junior high information. And then once we have the elementary information, I think that's when we're going to be able to really make a determination as to what the actual needs are. Because if the needs at the elementaries has changed and they're not able to have teachers travel to one of the other schools, then we'll need to obviously plan for that.
Yes, Ms. Lowry, there's a question here from Ms. Leeper. We had 2 elementary teachers travel to high school. Actually, it was this year they are traveling. The one teacher at elementary is able to come here for 2 periods, as there is time between her duties between the 2 buildings. But the one teacher who comes from Ben Franklin, it all depends on the enrollment in Ben Franklin. If Ms. Urbani says the enrollment is up and cannot spare that teacher, then we would be down a period for her. However, if she's able to be spared, if we do hire the one art teacher and we have that teacher for the 4 periods, and if the elementary teacher does come, then we can cover all sections of everything, including Art 3D too.
Mr. McElhaney, for the group, for the committee, I think it's important if you can clarify. We're not hiring people to do lunch duty, correct? These people will be teaching the periods that you need in order to get the sections in. Is that correct, sir? Just for the committee's understanding?
That is correct. Ms. Porter does not have supervision duties in this schedule, nor would the replacement person or persons who are here.
Thank you, Mr. McElhaney. Ms. Lowry, Mr. President has a comment or question?
Sure.
Uta, this is kind of I'm glad Mike brought that up. This has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. I still want our system to look at wherever possible, freeing up the professional educators to do the job we've hired them for and find other ways to cover study hall, bus duty, what have you, that still meets the spirit and the letter of the law, but does not tie up valuable resources of the teacher.
I think I definitely agree with you there. Tamara has her hand up.
So, I feel like this is super, super overwhelming and there's a lot of information and there's a lot of moving parts. As I look at the schedule and think about the art teachers from the elementary school and knowing these depend on their schedule, do we know, like, what was the factor that made the teacher be able to, from Ben Franklin, be able to travel? Did she used to not be able to do that? Was it a COVID thing? How?
That's a great question, Ms. Sleeper. I think I can respond in two different ways. One, they just never asked our teachers to travel in the past, so it was just never something we did before. Then when you tie up the number of kids who decided to go hybrid, or synchronous or asynchronous, it freed up some additional space. So with the pandemic, we had some extra flexibility. After talking to Aaron, Krista, Dawn, and Kelly, what our concern is, if we see a full reopening in the future and kids decide to come back like they have been at the elementary level, that would take away from some of that flexibility and availability to send the teacher up to the junior high and or secondary. But prior to COVID, we simply didn't have them go to the other buildings. And why, I don't know. That was before my time, but we have since made sure we're utilizing staff to the greatest extent possible.
Okay. Miss Zackrell's on here and she has her hand raised, so I'd love to hear what she has to say because I believe she's that teacher.
Okay. Yes, hi there. I was just going to answer for myself. It was because my hours were changed to the high school hours. So that freed up time for me to go to the high school in the mornings. So it's not that my schedule had the free time in it before, it was that my hours changed to high school hours. So that freed up time in the morning.
Okay, so that alleviated you of doing maybe like morning duties? Or,
right.
Yeah, so we took those.
Well, the high school,
yeah.
Tamara, the high school starts earlier, so.
Right, but I understand that, but it would have, if she taught that first class, then her morning at the school, I don't know, she can speak to this more, but if it changed her day, then would assigning her a class, regardless of the census at the elementary school, change? I don't know. I guess I would like more information on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tamara, I think it's a good point. I think we're back to, we have some information, but I think until we know what the needs are at the elementaries, we're not going to be able to fully close this and resolve or come to any kind of decision, because it right now is somewhat fluid.
If I could add a little to this, this is Mr. Heinrich speaking. By moving the elementary teachers to follow the high school schedule, we're able to make up for class times in the margins, where there's 25 minutes where the teachers report to the elementary before students arrive. Then there's some, like you said, morning duty time with arrival and breakfast. That time turns into instructional time at the secondary level, where we're able to utilize the elementary teachers to teach some classes while, like I said, in the margins of the elementary schedule. We also end their day early, which removes them from the closure procedures at the elementary, which take a lot of time with the younger children. So by moving them to the secondary schedule, we're able to make up those one or two classes that we need to make up at the secondary level for them to teach. So that's really why we lose time with them traveling back, which is the negative side of that. But that's where we're able to come up with all the classes we need at the elementary plus the few classes at the secondary level.
Rob, the only comment I have about traveling teachers is I think we need to be really aware of when they're traveling and when they have their travel time. So while it may make sense to have a teacher travel between two buildings, it may not make sense to have a teacher travel between 3 buildings.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree.
Because they'd have, if you travel between 3 buildings, you'd have 2 travel periods built in there. And so we'd be missing, those are 2 periods that they wouldn't be teaching.
Yes, ma'am. And even if it's a 10-minute trip, it eats up a whole instructional period just
Right.
because, they're en route when this is going on. So it is something we're aware of, and it's definitely something we're looking at as we build these schedules.
Okay, Tom has his hand up, and then we'll get back to you, Tamara.
I'd like to remind the board that we're only being asked to approve the search today at the board meeting. We can certainly take the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks to figure out exactly what we're going to be hiring. I would like to ask the administration, why can't we hire 2 half-time positions as an example? Is that possible also? Is that something we could consider?
Well, I'll let somebody from the administration answer that.
Mr. Hurley, I didn't hear what the last part was, sir.
He wanted to know if we could hire 2 part-time positions rather than a full-time position.
We thought about that. We kicked that around. We just thought finding 2 qualified candidates who want to work part-time may be difficult than finding 1 person, but that's something definitely we can look into. To record. No, there's nothing that would be precluding. I can think off the top of my head that would preclude us from doing that now.
We can't hear this conversation that's happening in the boardroom
I'm
or
sorry,
at the junior high. I'm sorry.
No, I can't. The people in the boardroom can't hear when we talk in the microphones. So it is possible to hire a pair of part-time people and avoid the travel time, but finding part-time people could be difficult. Is what Mike was saying.
Correct.
To your point, Mr. Hurley, we are asking just to post, interview, and advertise. So there's no final decision. But the question the committee has to ask themselves, if you'd like to wait, we can wait, but that may limit the amount of qualified candidates we get, but it could not. I don't know.
I would certainly I'd certainly rather do the posting and begin the process. And then as we go through the process, we'll be able to figure out more about the timeframes and the assignments. Thank you.
Tom, I tend to agree with, this is Julia, I tend to agree. My concern, Uta, I just want to say this, is that I think it would be better for 1 full-time. I do think it's probably hard to find part-time, 2 part-time. Not saying we shouldn't try, but I'm in favor of at least posting for it anyway.
Tamara, you had your hand up, and then I have a comment, and then I think we need to get to the junior high schedule before we run out of time.
Okay, so my thoughts are searches take a lot of resources, and we might just want to save those resources as far as time that our employees spend doing the work until we have it ironed out. That's just my thought, although I'm flexible on it. But I just wanted to, I know this is a very important decision that we're making, and there are a lot of people that have very strong ties to art. I believe in art. I love art. But I just want to clarify some things that I think have been misunderstood. And I want to make sure I understand it. Just regarding the elementary teacher from Ben Franklin, nothing was taken away from the children at Ben Franklin when we put her there. Merely she was not doing duties at Ben Franklin anymore. And that's how we substituted that position to cover the high school.
That is correct. All our classes were held.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. I think that was important. Do we want to move to the junior high?
Yes, Ms. Lowry, thank you. Dr. Minnick and Mr. Edmondson, we'll give you the floor. Randy's going to pull up the sheet that you emailed or hyperlinked, and I'll turn the floor over to you 2 gentlemen.
Hello, Mr. Vukovic. Good evening, everybody. If you could enlarge that top graphic for me so we can zero in on the art schedule, and then we can scroll down and look at what a typical student schedule will look like. Unlike the high school, the junior high school is more grade level driven as opposed to student request driven. In many ways, that is part of the essence that we find ourselves wrestling with, being caught between a elementary and a senior high school model. What I mean by grade level driven is that for as long as I've been here, we have provided encore classes, and in this case, tonight's discussion focuses on art. We have provided art as a part of the encore rotation for every student across all 3 grades. The top graphic will show you how we intend to use a position that would be split between the junior and senior high. You can see that in the middle of the graphic, where the red highlight where it says junior high art teachers would have our current art teacher along with a teacher to be determined, would have 4 instructional periods together. Those would coincide with when we offer both 7th and 8th grade encores. So what we would gain back by having a position to split, first of all, to clarify, we would need 4 positions in order to bring back or restore a full quarter of art for all 3 grades.
I'm sorry, you mean 4 classes, right?
That's correct.
Okay, you said 4 positions, and I was getting a little nervous.
I'm sorry.
That was I, Miss Lowry. Jared was too. I think Jared's having sweats in the back. I'm not sure.
Well, here's the good news. I know everyone's awake.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Uta. This is 4 instructional periods is correct. And just as Wade was describing the different programs that they offer at the high school, the junior high has really taken deep dives into these areas, which end up serving as a feeder program for those even more in-depth course offerings that they offer at the senior high. So my personal philosophy, and I've shared this with our art program here at the junior high, is to align a shared position with 7th and 8th grade encores, so that when we get into portraiture, working with metals and clays, just to name a few, we can take deeper dives with smaller classes. This year we had larger classes because we essentially maintained the art class with all students across the building. We did have a student that was, or I'm sorry, a teacher that was directed to us from the elementary for 2 periods, and they aligned with 8th grade again, because when kids get to 8th grade, they really start to separate who's passionate about art, who wants to take a deeper dive into art, and possibly pursue art as part of their pathways beyond high school. But at the very least, we expose them to the curriculum that we have at the junior high school with greater depth in 7th and certainly by 8th grade. But if we split a position, as this graphic shows, we would direct that person to share the teaching responsibilities in both 7th and 8th grade, and then 6th grade would have larger class sizes, as our remaining full-time art teacher would be responsible for cycling in all of 6th grade. That would be a little bit more reflective of an elementary style program where we have larger class sizes, and that teacher's schedule would have a total of 6 instructional regular program classes, which are 6 instructional periods plus their lunch and their prep, and their 9th period, which is our flex period, is where we would cycle in both enrichment art and adaptive art for life skills students on a rotating basis. So you could count that as a 7th instructional period, although it's a very specific student body in those 2 courses. Now, if we scroll down, this is this is a generalized Bell schedule view, which gives you an indication of what a typical both student and teacher schedule looks like. I'll just focus on 6th grade. If we have homeroom to start off the day at 7:30, 6th grade will have 4 regular ed classes, a win period, which is what I need, is where we will focus on supplementals in both math and language arts. That is part of an introduction to an MTSS structure at the junior high level, this win period. Now, I just plugged it in there as a template so you could wrap your head around. It falls in somewhere across the core subjects, but all of our teachers will have at least 6 instructional periods plus lunch and prep plus a flex period. Some of them will have win periods throughout the day, because when all of the 6th grade goes to encore, one of those encore classes serves as their prep. So the win, I just separated it from there. The win is indicative of the fact that those teachers that are reg ed teachers, they don't have a period off. They're in some kind of a element of supervising kids working on supplementals. And in the past, we've had things like math labs when we've been able to schedule it when kids are available to go to a math lab. So we too have full schedules. The one thing that's unique from the senior, well, there are a lot of things that make us unique from the senior high, but our lunch is not scheduled as a full period. We have grade level lunch rotations, which has always been a value point. We want to keep, especially when kids are younger, 6th graders with other 6th graders. I think it's a way to nurture younger kids and keep them together so that they're with each. That's been a shared value at the middle school, and we've had that as a rotation by grade level for many years now. If we are to sustain that, the lunch rotations that look like they fall within 5th and 6th period, it does take a little bit longer than the typical 40 minutes plus 3-minute transitions. It's a little longer than 126, 129 minutes because of the length of those transitions. We have had encore teachers plugged in to a lunch duty when there was nothing else available for them to do. The reason for that is we need to have able people supervising, especially this year where we have lunches operating across 3 to 4 different areas. We have like an art teacher this year does have a lunch duty, but next year, in next year's model, provided we can get back to business as we've known it in the past, I do not anticipate having these art teachers in any lunch duties. But I will say that our model is very, very different than the high school model. We have anywhere from 650 to 680 students a year across this 3-grade program at the junior high, and providing art for every one of those students in a meaningful way. We would need 4 periods. Sorry, Uta, you caught me again. 4 periods to help distribute kids so that we can go a little bit deeper than just exposing them to content. We can get them to actually explore content that actually is built upon at the next level. So I'm happy to take any questions. I hope that the graphic is easy to understand. I wanted to make it general and simple so that it's relatively easy to follow, but I'm happy to take questions if there are any at this point.
Mr. Harley has his hand up.
Mike, the high school has a 4/7 of a teacher and you have 4/9 of a teacher. Does that equal 1 full-time position, or do we have an overlap here that we're more than full-time? Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm really able to answer that wholly. What started out as how would we distribute one full teacher across 2 buildings, Wade and I had to really look at our programming and say, how much do we need in order to make this fly? And one of the things that we felt we want to do is to restore 45 days of art for all 3 grades. Right now, we have a teacher that the elementaries were able to free up for 2 periods out of the day. Now, if you can hang with me for 1 second, I'm trying to answer your question. I think that if we were to look at all things, and Wade and I's schedules don't match perfectly. He runs a 10-period schedule, and lunch is included as 1 full period, where we run a 9-period schedule and lunch is not a full period. So I said, I have to have 4 instructional periods. And if we shared a teacher, when you include travel, when you include a lunch and a prep, I think at most, and if Wade has 4 and I have 4, I think at most I would get 3 periods out of that shared teacher, which would mean I would still need somebody from within the district to step up and help me fill, or Wade would need somebody from within the district to step up and fill whatever periods that aren't covered by the shared teacher that would be the new teacher. Wade, I don't know if that is as clear. I don't know if that came across as clear as I'd like, or if that answered your questions. I see more hands going up, so.
I don't know who had their hand up first, so Tom.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my hand down.
Okay, Tamara.
So where did the art teacher that was coming from the elementary come from for the junior high?
I believe she comes from East Pike Elementary.
So we had East Pike going to the junior high, Ben Franklin and Ike's teacher going to the senior high.
I believe that's correct. The East Pike's teacher, her name is Alyssa Millen. She starts her day here, and then she transitions over to East Pike following our 2nd period.
Okay, so in this model, would she still be coming to the junior high?
We're not 100% sure, but if Mrs. Leeper, but if necessary and possible, yes.
So I'm gonna talk about what Walter had said. If we are just using her at East Pike during the morning for duties, etc., wouldn't it be the most efficient use of her time to have her go to the junior high and start her day there?
Yes, ma'am. Most likely it would.
Okay. So who decides if that happens or not?
Well, I would imagine it depends on what the needs are at the elementary, which is kind of the unknown right now, right? Because if the elementary needs her for the entire day, then they don't have her to spare to go anywhere.
That is.
But correct. I thought if she started at the first 2 periods, she would be like Ms. Zackrell, and she would be starting her day on the junior high schedule and missing her duties on both ends of the day. So,
but that only works.
I'm sorry. I thought she would still be there for the whole instructional day, like Ms. Zackrell is.
No, she'll miss 1 period in travel and 1 period at the end of the day. Part of a period at the end of the day.
Mr. Heinrich, for the sake of the committee, is it clear to say and fair to say that we have 3 elementary art teachers that we have to find at least 2 periods for them to cover, and also build in travel time, but we don't think it's insurmountable. We think it's fair and accurate representation of what we need in order to continue our program as it was 2 years ago?
That is a very fair statement, yes.
Cinda?
Yeah, so something that Mike just said adds to the question that I have. I'd be interested in knowing at the junior high how many students were in each of the 7th and 8th grade classes 2 years ago. And my question is, right now, the 6th grade classes appear to have 26 students each. The 7th grade appear to only have 13, that's half. And the 8th grade appear to have 14, which is also approximately half. So I understand you're saying that the 7th and 8th grade starts to drill down and get more into detail and they get involved and then like to go on to the senior high. But what if instead of having 4 7th grade classes with 13 students each, if you had 3 7th grade classes with 17 students each? That's still a lot less than the 26 in 6th grade, and it would give you an extra class. Same thing for the 8th grade classes. Instead of 14 students each in 4 classes, change it to 3 classes, and you would have 19 students each, which is, again, significantly less than 26. And they would still get the same detail, and we could have 2 extra periods that would be freed up for somebody to teach something else or somewhere else.
What's difficult with our model, and I mean, mathematically, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Brode, but when we are doing a rotation, again, this is a grade level rotation. This isn't like an elective rotation. So just pulling out one section, it's not that easy because we still have family consumer science, tech ed, computer concepts, music, health and phys ed. So this rotation of our those are called our on, and each one of them, in this case, we're talking about art. How do you reconcile that mathematically? You have to reconcile if you start pulling out a certain number of sections, well, then it's going to have a trickle effect where maybe FCS or whomever, it throws off all the numbers. So you're either going to have extremely large or extremely small classes rotating kids through all of those encore classes. It's not quite that simple. And going back to 2 years, you asked how many kids were in classes. Those class sizes were pretty appealing. We had 2 art teachers for the whole building. With 2 art teachers in the entire junior high, we serviced all of our students going through art for a full quarter at each grade level. So the groups, the class sizes were smaller, absolutely smaller for sure.
Uta, excuse me, Mike. Uta.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm wondering whether or not, I think the real question before the committee tonight is whether or not to approve the listing of these or the posting of this position. I thought Cinda asked a really, really good question, but I'm wondering whether or not, rather than debate it here in the committee, it sounds like that's a little more research and planning on the administration's part, and whether or not we could maybe move this thing forward as far as posting for the position and then allow the administration to come back to us with the more definitive answer of what Cinda is asking and some of the other issues that have been raised here.
Well, I think that's an option, but I would imagine, and I am not an artist, nor am I an art teacher, but I would imagine that what you're looking for an art teacher at the senior high is very different than what you're looking for at an art teacher at an elementary, and is probably different than what you might be looking for at the junior high. And so I come back around to, how are you going to advertise a position? You can advertise an art position within the district, but you certainly can't interview anybody because you don't know yet what grades they're going to be teaching. And we still need more information going off of what Cinda's question was, and we still don't know what the needs are at the elementary. So I'm okay with advertising it. But I think before we move beyond that, we need to know what we're looking for.
Uta, something that Mr. Minnick said made me ask more questions, and I'm sorry, I'm going down the rabbit hole, because if we can't do anything as far as making a fewer number classes of art because it's all involved with the encore classes, how many students are in each of the other encore classes? Are those encore classes consisting of only 13 and 14 students each, or do they have 26 students? What's that? I think it's, if those classes are all intertwined inextricably, then they could be untangled if there was an across the board change in class size. Now, like I said, I don't know how many people are in the other classes, the other encore offerings, but I think we need more information.
If I could interject, it depends on the encore class, Miss Brode. Like, for example, our gym classes, we can certainly handle larger groups. We have upwards of 30 kids in a gym class. Our computer concepts have upwards of 29 kids in computer concepts. Family consumer science, tech ed, you're dealing with, appliances and tools. So, we share rosters and flip them for, and I'm not trying to be cryptic, but we have, there's an inherent need to try to reduce the number from 30 down to something that we can operate and facilitate the planned instruction with safety and with fidelity. So some classes can be bigger classes, and I gave you a couple of examples. So no, they're not all like 13 and 14, but certainly our art labs where you're getting into some of the content that they're, whether it's pottery wheels or working with metals and some of the things that are involved with that. The classes are smaller than elementary art classes where you get into the mid-20s. But in I guess the simplest way to say it is there is absolutely a domino effect. Every time you pull out a piece, there's a domino effect on the others. So if I pulled out a section of art, it would have a trickle effect where other classes would start to balloon, and it's hard for me to convey that clearly if you haven't been in it, but it does have a trickle effect.
Well, I have two comments. You said elementary classes have a lot more kids. Well, these sixth graders have 26. That's quite a few kids, first thing. Second thing, if it causes so much of a problem having to tweak a schedule, tweak the system to get maximum efficiency and availability of courses for everybody, maybe we need to look at the whole entire system and rethink it. If it's that impossible to be flexible, then maybe we need to look at something else. That's for another day, but we still, that's it. We've got to be able to be flexible to meet the needs with the resources that we have.
No, I agree. And I never use the word impossible. I'm not saying anything's impossible. I'm just saying I can't give you an answer right off the top of my head. I just know that there's a trickle effect. That's all I'm trying to say. And I realize that the numbers in sixth grade are larger. That's because if based on this graphic, if we have one teacher versus two teachers, that's going to be part of the impact. So, and that would look more commensurate with an elementary classroom, art classroom with something in the mid-20s. That's absolutely an accurate observation. And that's part of what has to be considered when you're deciding whether or not a position is either added or not. But I'm not saying anything's impossible. I'm just saying we would have to play around and see what type of domino effect that would have. So I don't believe anything's impossible. I think that I was just merely presenting what one position, 4 instructional periods at the junior high would look like. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Tammy, you have a question?
Yeah, I've taught art classes and as you can see, I play it a little bit. And if you're teaching, and I think we should look for more art people. But at the same time, I also know that if you add more kids to art classes, it makes it a lot harder to teach them different techniques and more aesthetics and all that. It's kind of like when you're a parent and you have one child. It's easy. You have two children, it's like you're doubling the quotient of chaos in your home. Suddenly it's like you have 4 kids running around. And if you have 3, yeah, it's heck. That's just my opinion. So
can I talk into here? Can you hear me, Tammy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I agree with you. I think that was well said.
Thank you.
All right. So it sounds like we definitely need some more information, and we may or we may not want to consider whether or not we want to know exactly what our needs are before we advertise for a position. There's pros and cons to it. There may be some people who are not interested in if there would be an opening, if we find a way to shift people around and all of a sudden it's an elementary art position. There's some people who might prefer a different set of grades to age ranges to teach. But I think I'm going to leave that up to the administration to decide how best to do that. But I definitely think before we, if we approve posting before we interview anybody, we need to really know exactly what our needs are and have explored all of our options and even answered some of the questions that came up today. And I don't want to rush this conversation, but I also am trying to be aware of the time.
Yeah, 6:38.
Cinda, Tamara?
I just want to say one more thing. We know that it is very unlikely that our 5th graders are going to get back into Eisenhower for the first semester. So we're going to have an art teacher that is there that was traveling to the senior high school for 2 periods a day. I think that we should probably look at that mix because that's going to definitely have an impact. I don't know when we do this. Again, I am feeling a little bit rushed. I feel like I don't have enough information right now to make a decision, especially on, is it a part-time? Is it a full-time? Is it 2 full-times? Is it 1.5? And I think that we have gotten a lot better, our administration has gotten a lot better at using staff time wisely without doing duties, etc. So if we could hire half-time positions, so we're not paying travel time, I think that's good. I think just saying nobody will want a half-time position. There are plenty of people who don't want to work full-time, and we have very nice salaries, and a half-time here is like a full-time in some other districts. So I don't think we should just assume that nobody will want a part-time position.
Thanks, Tamara. Cinda?
I agree with both of you. Number one, I think we're going too fast. I don't think we have all the details. I don't think it's been looked at closely enough for what could be. I very definitely agree that if somebody is applying for a position that's posted for as a senior high art position and they've got a K-12 certificate, that's fine. But I personally would not go and apply for a position that was an elementary position if I had a K-12 certificate. I'd go for the 12th grade. And if elementary was offered to me, I would back out. The other thing is, I know that there are people, and I don't know how many people with art certificates there are in the area, but people who are living in the area who are certified to teach, many of them would be very happy to have a part-time position. It's kind of the best of both worlds. It's good pay and it's a flexible schedule. So I don't think we should count that out either. And so I think we need to research it, get more information, and take our time deciding so that we're not having to change on the fly again.
Okay, thank you. Mike, I can't see the agenda anymore, so I don't know. We had a couple of more items on the agenda for this meeting that are also on the agenda for our board meeting.
We do, Ms. Lowry. I'll defer to you how you want to lead this. It's 6:42. Executive session is supposed to start at 6:15. All the items that you see on there are on the agenda tonight. Would you like me to go over them? I can remove number 6. Number 6, we don't have to really make a decision, or we can, yes, at the board meeting, we can open them up once they're motion, discuss them then. I'll defer to you. How do you want to proceed?
Yeah, I think we're gonna, I think we need to, at least 5, 6, 7, and 8, we can probably leave for at the board meeting. As far as 4, I don't know how quick that conversation will be, but I certainly don't think we have time for it here. So it probably will need to carry over to the board meeting tonight. And I know that's not ideal, but I mean, I think that our conversation is important, and I think we really needed to have it. And I've identified some other avenues and things to look at. So I want to thank everybody who's participated and presented. I know it took a lot of time, and I like the creative thinking. So thank you. So I guess the remaining agenda items we'll just deal with at the board meeting.
Yes, ma'am. Randy, go ahead in the meeting then. If Ms. Lowry is okay with that.
I'm okay with it. Thank you so much.